Hidetaka Miyazaki's Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, just dropped a nearly 3-minute story trailer on a random weekday with a strong focus on story. I went frame by frame to bring you as many details as possible. I'm Moxie, and this is Heavy Speculation. If you are just as hyped for Shadow of the Erdtree or other gaming lore, consider subscribing to the channel. It's free and it helps a ton. Let's get into it. According to the official Elden Ring Twitter account, quote, "The Shadow of the Erdtree story can now be told. Learn the history of the realm of Shadow, the unseen land."
Witness the tyranny of Messmer's flame. Marika's Golden Order was birthed from Shadow. Messmer's flame purged the lands. Miquella would abandon grace in pursuit of something greater. Will you walk with him?
Sweetie.
Peggy 16.
Considering I was podcasting way too late with Last Protagonist, I was pretty late to the game. So I took time to gather up as many different tweets, Reddit posts from fans, and videos from content creators alike to give you a full scope of what people think is going on, including my own speculation. First, let's break down the narration and see how it applies to the story that is being conveyed through these extremely thematic visual images.
Miquella the Kind spoke of the beginning.
So, Miquella is aware of what happened in the beginning. If this is true, then perhaps by the point he passed on this knowledge, he had already learned of it, and it could have been a message delivered through some sort of spiritual voicemail or something. The other possibility is that Miquella was aware of the plot point and is seeking the answers that happened between the beginning and the shattering.
The seduction and the betrayal.
As to this line about seduction, there are a few different items that speak to this theme. The dancers' castanets. Castanets used by the dancers from a foreign land. Received from patches. The passionate dance comprises of no seductiveness, but merely a dignified beauty. Then you have the Black Flame monk set. Black Flame monks, enthralled by the god-slaying Black Flame, became traitors, abandoning their post as guardians. The seduction of a taboo is never easily spurned. There's this curious line that Dee says.
That's how you end up when seduced by those who live in death. When grace is sullied, it rots people from the inside.
And there are a ton more references in regard to the betrayal. And Gowry says,
"Sever that trust. Nurtured by betrayal, her bud will flower most vividly."
Corin says, "I've been gripped by that terrifying thought. The rhythms and calculus of the master's fingers betray a suspicion of holyism of the Golden Order." The Golden Order Greatsword speaks to the betrayal by Radagon to Rennala, which shall return back to later. Nefeli's puppet talks about how her own heart is betrayed, but she also feels like she betrays Gideon when she finds out about the slaughter of the Albinorix. There are two cut items that allude to the broken fingers being traitorous, whatever the broken fingers are, and having betrayed the finger readers. These are cut items, but with all the corpses built up around the Erdtree Sanctuary, it does beg the question whether or not they were betrayed by these so-called broken fingers. These items may have been cut as the lore around the maidens changed. This would imply that the maidens served under the fingers. It is kind of fun to think about who the broken fingers could be, like maybe Ranni's fingers or something. Then of course there's the sword monument in the mountaintops. The war against the giants, champions battle, trolls betray, fire vanquished. The era of the Erdtree begins. Ranni mentions betraying everything that came before, and Blythe swears up and down that he would never betray Lady Ranni. Remembrance of the Black Blade. Maliketh was a shadowbound beast given to his Empyrean. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away destined death. Even then, she betrayed him.
An affair from which gold arose.
The way I interpreted this line was that perhaps the affair is what birthed Marika, since Marika is the Erdtree, so being the embodiment of gold came from the affair. However, I really appreciate the way that Kitetails interpreted this. She suggests that the affair Marika had was with the Serpent God. Another idea that she brought up was that the affair was between Marika and the painting guy. Let's call him Jimmy. So Jimmy and Marika have an affair, and this affair is what gives birth to the Erdtree. It's really fascinating either way you spin it.
And so too was Shadow born.
Golden Rune 6. Those born at the foot of the Erdtree are blessed. At least that is the enduring belief of the people of the plateau. Blood Boon. The Mother of Truth craves wounds. When Mogh stood before her, deep underground, his accursed blood erupted with fire, and he was besotted with the defilement that he was born into. And this brings up a good point about Mogh. When he communes with Miquella, did he somehow take some power from the Land of Shadow for his sorceries like Bloodflame? Food for thought.
One that could never be put to song.
And the only thing I can think of is the painting Champion Song, which depicts the hero's grave at Altus Plateau.
A purge without grace or honor.
I saw another one like her long ago. Their eyes share the same hue.
You know, Hewg really has me thinking a lot recently. Something he says about Roderica is he's like, that really brought him. And it's like, did we bring Roderica to the table? It kind of calls that into question, but also I'm indebted to a spirit tuner. So are we going to meet someone like Roderica's other half, maybe? Or Roderica's mother? Clearly Roderica reminds Hewg of someone in her likeness, so it begs the question, is the person with the blue hood supposed to be representative of who Hewg met?
The tyranny of Messmer's flame.
So I thought there was a line because it was in the text dump, but then I was looking for it and thought it was Gideon. It must be the opening intro, and it wasn't that opening intro either, so ended up being a cut any line.
Right card, the tyrannical serpent.
So now we can get into the visuals of the trailer. I've been drawing hands since I was 8, and let me tell you what, the shape of the wrist is extremely feminine. A masculine wrist is a lot thicker and has more girth. This person, who is probably Marika, wears the same bracelet as the paintings shown in the opening cinematic. I think this is the Gloamite Globe of Gloamite Queen. We know that she was in fact slain at the hands of Maliketh, but it has never told us where that happened. So I was thinking about it. Maliketh has 2 instances of himself inhabiting the lands between. So maybe Maliketh isn't from this world. And that begs the question, what's going on between Maliketh and Gronk? Because if you kill Gronk, then Maliketh is still there. Or, the Gronk in Maliketh's boss chamber. So it really begs the question, what's the deal with Maliketh? What's the deal with Shadowborn? Shadowbound? Whatever. Finger Slayer Blade. The hidden treasure of the eternal city of Nokron. A blade said to have been born of a corpse. This blood-drenched fetish is proof of high treason committed by the eternal city, and symbolizes its downfall. Cannot be wielded by those without a fate, but it is said to be able to harm the greater will and its vassals. Something feels relevant between this image and that item description. Plus the little lines on the opening could be hand-stitched or sewn, like Kitetails mentioned. But it also kind of reminds me of the Sacred Relic sword, the little lines on the inside of the blade. Bandit mentioned that he thinks that it's the opening to the Godwin Eye that's below Stormveil, since it has eye sockets and not eyeballs. And I can't say that the thought didn't cross my mind. The quote, "Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame." Maybe the gold is literally stripped from somewhere, and that somewhere is here, which definitely gives the Godskin vibes. One of the only, if not the only person referenced to be pregnant in Elden Ring is the Gloamite Queen, the Swaddling Cloth, and the protective black flame, which both allude, if not confirm, the Gloamite Queen giving birth to the Godskin apostles. Considering Ashes of War are spirits summoned from past battles, and the swaddling cloth literally comes from the Spirit Caller cave, perhaps it's not a stretch to imply that the Gloamite Queen could be part of the Land of Shadow. This would also make sense because her sword is kept at the bottom of a divine tower, guarded by one of her children, and several Black Flame monks. This also reminds me of the Golden Order Greatsword, mainly because it's translucent like this. Greatsword made of light, modeled after the Elden Ring itself, forged by the King Consort Radagon to proudly symbolize the tenets of the Golden Order. Telltale signs betray that this was once the Greatsword bequeathed to him by his wife, Renala. And there's actually red in the blade, which, considering these images side by side, it could be blood. Another thing that this reminds me of is a quote from Miyazaki, from the overture of Elden Ring, page 54. Quote, "But the demigod's immortality stems from having their fated deaths removed from the Elden Ring." I don't expect that to make much sense right now, but as you play the game, I think you'll gradually come to understand. I heard several people cooking on Marika being one of 3 goddesses. The Fates in Greek mythology are 3 women, so this woman who is pregnant being the spool, Marika perhaps being the one in charge of watching the threads, and the Gloamite Queen being responsible for cutting the threads. I think it is interesting food for thought nonetheless, even if you don't buy it. Bandit pointed out a similar thing in his trailer analysis about the womb. Storm brought up that these could be skin corpses of sacrifices, perhaps a Godskin reference, and I really dig it. It definitely gets me more excited to learn more about the supposed Gloamite Queen, which literally only has like 8 items associated with her. Marika's walking up the stairs and the Elden Beast, what is that song called? The Elden Ring OST that we're all so familiar with is playing. That's what makes me think that this is definitely at the end of what we will be experiencing in the DLC. Just a vibe. There are skeletons hanging around in the very bottom of the darkness of the frame. There's also jiggle physics on this little part that she steps on. See, watch, it jiggles. Woo woo woo. Storm also tweeted that the skinned corpses make him believe that the Godskin hunt really happened within the realm of Shadow. And I definitely agree with Bandit that this right here was a slaughter. This almost confirms that this is Marika because both the armbands and the spiral bangles are seen. The emerald gecko suggests that Marika could have been from a cocoon and that Miquella is also emulating his mother, and I love this idea. The ocean is visible from the shot, and inside this weird gruesome doorway, the wind is blowing really hard. Like a gust.
To me, this looks like Radica. And what I mean by that is, it's Marika's consciousness, which is represented in her golden hair, but Radagon's body, to be stronger, to be able to pull those strings down.
I don't mind it. So this could be like the they-them transversion of Marikon. Radica? The total rebus, if you will. To me, it does appear more feminine, but it could be the arm bangles or them hips that deceiveth me. Maybe this is the moment that she makes the veil. Smowtown tweeted, "What did you do, Marika?" So I'm gonna roll on the strong assumption that this is in fact Marika. There is one long braid coming out from like right above the ear. So she's like holding on to this right, and I think what will happen is that she will literally tug it and it crucifies her. Like that would do the sealing. I really don't know how else to explain this, but a reenactment of what I mean. My final point about this specific image is that it immediately reminded me of a rune arc. A shard of the shattered Elden Ring grants the blessing of an equipped rune upon use. It is said that the lower arc of the Elden Ring receive its bounty, and this is a shard of one such arc. There are a set number throughout the lands between, but the main medium of receiving rune arcs comes from invading other worlds. Here is a series of tweets that also interested me and I think will interest you. Gravity Fanime 812 said, Thread for thoughts. Is she making her seal to put on the Elden Ring and get rid of Destined Death here? Also, after these trailers, the scar and the sword seals look kinda... And I feel you on that one. Hi, gimme eyes, mommy, hiatus said, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I always thought that was kind of weird that it had like hairs coming off of it. I just assumed it was like energy, but now seeing this like side by side, I definitely think that they have probably like something to do with each other. Oh, the gold is in her hair. The grace of gold is literally in her hair. The gold comes from her hair, it passes on to her children. I don't know. Zaya Storm tweeted this. All of those skin corpses in the trailers saying gold and shadow were born makes me think about how the Godskin hunts happened in the Land of Shadow, since we don't really have a record of it in the Lands Between. Not to mention, the sky is gloaming in this scene, which is the next scene. Yeah, the first thing that was striking to me was the gloam color of the sky. This is definitely meant to remind us of the Erdtree. It also reminds me of Memory of Grace, which was called Vision of Grace in the network test. The memory of First Grace, which once guided Bygone Tarnished to the Lands Between. Lose all runes and return to the last site of Grace visited. It is merely a cycle. Stand before the Elden Ring. Become the Elden Lord. This might be the inside meat of the tree as well, like the internal part underneath the bark. Like, this is where all the bodies were absorbed when people had Erdtree burials. Obviously, they are piled up here. Visually, this implies a traffic jam pile-ups kind of situation where it's not flowing out to the other side. So what I'm thinking is that the inside is the Lands Between and the outside is pretty gloomy. It is more saturated in purple than the color of the beast eye and Melina's gloam eye. But then again, Destined Death was sealed, no? So the result of it being sealed here could make the sky more purple than just like a desaturated purple or desaturated blue. I don't know. People argue way too much about the colors here. So since this is the place where Marika first stepped foot, then maybe this scene is depicting the time when she birthed the Erdtree. So Kitetail seems to think that Marika may have like wooed the serpent god, and I really dig that idea too. We do know that there was definitely a serpent god because of the serpent god's curved sword. There's a gold and purple lens flare, which I wonder if that's trying to imply a theme. Tim Diggity suggests that this tree might be the Crucible, and that's sick. But bruv, like, why do they gotta dupe the basket though? These right here are called pinnacles. These little pinnacles match the ones from the Chapel of Anticipation and the place down the side of Stormvale where you fight that Crucible Knight. It doesn't share the exact same qualities, but it's definitely reminiscent of the Renaissance Revival type architecture. There are these little arms which look like they could be moving. So maybe they grab people or they catch the people being thrown to them by another enemy to slam dunk the Tarnished. Or they will use their little arms to pick up the balls that are inside the basket and throw them, which is probably more likely. The entire image just definitely gives side vibes. They're invading somewhere they are not meant to be. It reminds me of the story trailer, how the trolls in the army are marching up on the Erdtree during the Shattering, allegedly. And the architecture here reminds me of the structures outside of the entrance to Lindell, where the door is shut. This seems like a cross between a Cuckoo Knight and like a Crucible Knight. You feel me? The bottom half definitely reminds me of that, but if you look at the stature and the stance, you can definitely see the Crucible type. The fabric also looks to be that same weird teal color, but it's really hard to tell with the light. This guy has a sigil on his chest, and I don't think that this is the first time that we've seen it either. If you look on the top side of the golden parts of the ramparts in Stormvale, there is this symbol that appears between the details. It also appears at the entrance of the Erdtree. Kitetail said Crucible Knight vibes, and I gotta agree. can't really tell what color it is from the atmospheric color around this character, but I think it would be really cool if it really was the red gold that she mentioned. Messmer leads a very disciplined army in marching formation, showing that like he definitely has control of what he's doing. He's invading the Shadow Realm. And it reminds me of the Banished Knight spears because of the white hair detail that comes from around the same spot. These stairs could be the same ones that Marika is walking up in the beginning, but I don't know. The dude that is laying face down reminds me of either Morgott or perhaps Garank. More like Morgott because of the gold on the tattered robes, maybe. Maybe even Mogh because I think he has very similar get-up. Mainly this gold arc on the lapel. So that implies something interesting. Is like Mogh really able to come back and forth between the Land of Shadow and the Lands Between? Because that's an interesting concept if he can. Or if like we meet Mogh again. I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. And last protagonist also suggested that this could be Gronk on stream, but I also like doubt it because of the gold on the robes. So I don't know. Appears like they are marching away from the Shadow Tree out toward the Land of Shadow, because I think that we have mainly seen the city from the other angle. On this tower, there is what looks to be the same decoration that's on the Erdtree capital upside down. But this motif also appears in the Eternal Cities. It's what Tarnished Archaeologists coined like an amoeba or something. I can't remember, in one of their many amazing videos. This down here also has black roots coming out. And at first I thought this was a death bird, but it doesn't move, so it's probably roots. And that begs the question, is it death root? Is it briars? Could it be like a different kind of tree? Is it the tree that's like wrapped around this shadow tree? Who knows? I don't know. Do you know? And I think that there are flames of Destined Death flying through the air. That was like my first thought when I watched the trailer. I was like, that's death. That's Destined Death right there. That's the Rune of Death. It was sealed here. And Ziostorm also mentioned Rancor Call. But here's the thing. To me, it looks like Destined Death. It like that is the Rune of Death, like actively at work, and just like hold on to this point because I'll show you why in a few shots. There's an ocean also in the background, so keep note of that. The sky is gray, which is interesting. Also note that. Definitely feels like Messmer is like directing the flames because you can see him kind of like manifesting his will across the like he's like manifesting everything to burn down. Now, in this shot, this immediately reminded me of the scorpion stinger. I mean, just look at it. Look at it. And when this particle flies in front of it, it looks like it turns purple, but like that could be like a color correction. I don't know. Probably doesn't mean anything, but it definitely gives me the scorpion dagger vibes. This person, who is way more femme, seems to be in despair. It also is giving me Mad Max vibes to the max. She cradles the weapon itself, if that is what I think it is. Since people be turning into daggers and swords, it just really wouldn't surprise me. And of course, she is barefoot because we all know that Miyazaki loves seeing them little grippers. This reminds me of the silhouette of the Black Knights riding through the forest at night in the story cinematic that released prior to Elden Ring. Something I never mentioned from this trailer is that the place doesn't really look like it's in the Lands Between. There's these giant pine trees in the back that they're galloping through. And then there's this shot from the last trailer where this Black Knight is shooting a crossbow, and the other one from later on. So maybe the Knight of Black Knives took place in the Realm of Shadow. Like, where does this even take place? I don't think we ever saw it. And for some reason, this makes me think that maybe the fortified manor is from this world because it's charred like it was on fire.
I think this was once a real lion, whose corpse was made into that thing.
And I mean, like it's like bloody, it looks fresh, like the eyes are gray and they either look dead or tarnished to me. Maybe gloomy, I don't know. The Lion Dancer is fighting against Messmer. He is right here at the bottom of the flame. Very curious, why would these two cultures be at war with each other? Well, I think that the Lion Dancers are most likely native to this land and that they are trying to defend their home. This kind of reminded me of the Miranda flowers for some reason. But what it really reminds me of is the fire from Destined. As he casts this incantation, it looks like the black stuff is goo. And it comes from him. It almost looks like his hand is aging while he summons it. I color compared the codes on the white of the eye and the pupil, which is definitely Dragon Communion, like a lot of other people have said. The white of the eye just definitely seems Gloam colored? Maybe. Maybe Messmer is like the Gloam-eyed queen and Miquella. Miquella is everyone. The color of this flame is the same color as the shot from the last trailer. This could be a result of exporting or color correcting, but something is telling me that this color change of the flame might be story related. And I think these are meant to be lion dancers impaled. The Romans used to do this a lot. They put their enemies on spikes. I mean, like a lot of other cultures have done too, but like the Romans did it like a lot. This reminds me of the beastmen as well, the way that they were strung up in those positions. And maybe the beastmen were burned alive in a similar way. There's also these briars like way in the background. This also could be something else. They just seem like briars to me at least. The flame goes from yellow to red. Now this is important. Comparing similar footage side by side reveals this to be true. What also interests me is that these lion dancers are impaled the same way as the giants on the mountaintops. I wasn't the first to have this thought either. Jem on Twitter was thinking along the same train of thought. This guy right here has a spear that looks like a hilt, kind of like the black knife. There's this itty bitty golden branch that is really interesting, and the animations coming off the building look exactly the same as the Rune of Death emerging from the fire. It also gives me mad Death Stranding vibes. Like, look at the highway, like, you know what I'm saying? Like the highways, and then they have like the black stuff coming off the highway. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows. And just vibes, you know? Shout out to my Death Stranding lore. And check this out. There are holes on the underside of this tree and a gash. Maybe it's because I've been so focused on Stormveil, but this to me seems like whatever curse that marred and modeled Stormveil. I think this figure is Marika, and I think Jake mentioned this in his analysis, but if you look very closely at the tree, you can see the sinusoidal pattern running up the middle of the tree. There's also the thorns on the other side of the tree that are slam choking it. Last protagonist brought up that the necklace that Marika wears kind of looks like the thing that's hanging off the tree. I like that too. Bruh, is this like the broke ass needle? Oh my, I swear to God. I mean, the only place you can use it is the Storm Beyond Time. Like, yeah, it could probably be Miquella, but like, anyway, it's something to keep an eye out for in the DLC, because there still is like mysterious origins on like how it's made, or like we passing it, the needle back and forth between our shadow self and like our real self. I don't know. This thing in the middle is probably Marika. After a previous scene we saw it, it literally looks like her hanging crucified on the ark that she made in the first scene. Even Banoon pointed out that there's this little thing that looks like the Rune of Death spear that she is stabbed with, and like her leg is kind of popped out in that contrapposto pose. So like, consider that.
What if this is actually Marika's shadow projection? And maybe Miquella is trying to keep her alive by squeezing out the gold from the tree and feeding it into her. We know Marika is against the Golden Order stuff, and Miquella, after realizing Golden Order can't do shit for him, also started to hate the Golden Order. So he has a reason to keep his mommy alive, because Miquella loves his mummy.
He loves his mummy. We get a better look at the pillar in the background, which reminds me of the column of focus. Column of Marcus Aurelius also comes to mind as well, which is interesting given the architecture that is seen in the capital. And I think that these runes act as the site of grace, as they are in different locations. Many people have pointed this out. The architecture in this shot looks like the giant's pillars that are found in Mogh Dynasty. So if the pillars end up in the Land of Shadow, that really, I mean, I know that the Land of Shadow was like once a part of the Lands Between, but it's like, it just begs the question, like, what exactly did it take? Now, something I noticed about this shot is, like, obviously it's out of focus. Like, the whole thing is out of focus, first off. Like, everything is out of focus. But I don't know. It's weird. You can, like, see the wind blowing, and it looks like the reeds almost are red colored. I didn't really know what else to say about this shot because it's like why is everything out of focus? I don't know.
You know what's golden about Miquella? His hair. So what if those grace points, let's call them, are actually like Miquella's hair, which he pulls out one by one. And at the end of the game, we will see Miquella, but he's bald. Completely.
Like, Miquella is Patches. It's confirmed.
Patches is Miquella.
Is Patches.
We found him. It's confirmed.
Basically, it's canon. And now this next shot is just gorgeous. Like, just, There's like a bunch of petals falling down with this person who is probably the they, them, Saint Trina Miquella. Maybe this is depicting the moment that Miquella came to the Land of Shadow because they are reaching toward the sky very much like the corpse in the cocoon in Mogh Dynasty. Their hair looks like either a jellyfish or like the nascent butterfly. Bandit pointed out the description of the Saint Trina sword, of the sword of Saint Trina. Whatever. The only certainty is that their appearance was as sudden as their disappearance. And I really think this looks like the nascent butterfly. I like this tweet. Don't mind my silly brain. Yeah, like literally, I thought the same thing. Haro the Frog tweeted this, and like, yeah, I mean, obviously other people are on the same kind of mindset. And Sekiro Doobie tweeted, as soon as I saw Miquella in the water, I thought of Ophelia. And I gotta say, vibes. I think this is activating the grace, which is Miquella's rune. And Kaitail's brought up that it reminds her of a tracker touching a footprint. So on the r/answer subreddit, it says, if you're tracking an animal that is not wounded, you'll look for footprints, broken twigs, disturbed undergrowth, things like that. The visibility of the footprint depends on how soft the ground is. Miquella be like, I love it when people touch my hair. So silly. Bandit pointed out that he's hopeful that there will be some sort of additional area up here in the clouds. And I mean, yeah, I could definitely see something looming right behind the veil. And I'm definitely hoping that there's an unending DLC. The second half of the trailer is absolutely more positive and hopeful. And the music, the tone, the colors, the use of light, it's all very soft and pretty. The bottom of the rune gives me mad round table vibes. I can't help but stare at this branch poking out. It was visible in the Miquella's ring image from the background in the last trailer, which, as Tarnished Archaeologist and Ziostorm pointed out, looks very much like the statue of this old guy chilling with the plant, which also kind of be looking like the guy from the painting. And I don't think all these NPCs are going to be friendly either. Bandai Namco website says, guided by the Empyrean Miquella, players are beckoned to the Land of Shadow, a place obscured by the Erdtree, where the goddess Marika first stepped foot. In these strange new lands, players discover the dark secrets of the world as they meet others who follow in Miquella's footsteps with ulterior motives. Ooh. The group of followers gather around this cross in the field definitely reminds me of more of like a loving side. Like Miquella compelled all these people to follow him for a reason. Yeah, like he could be bad, but like what reason would that be? And like what would his motive be? It all comes down to motive, right? At the end of the day, motive is everything. Why would he want people to follow him? And if Miquella is trying to figure out what Marika was doing here, aren't we really just following Marika? We will probably be starting somewhere very close to here. The animation coming off Miquella's rune, it looks like the chrysalid brooch that we give to Roderica. Spirits try to convey something that cannot be heard, or something like that. So like, one of the things that I've been kind of simmering on since I wrote this was perhaps the story is being told backwards in order. Like we are being shown last thing first and is kind of stepping back all the way through the story that we're going to be playing. Get ready for Moxie's post-editing bingo round. Whoa! This is not scripted. So since I've had so much time to edit and like do all this research, I've been thinking about these line dancers a lot. It reminds me of like Sirosh, right? He's a beast. ferocious beast, and it doesn't always seem like they've been partnered with the Tarnished or partnered with a normal champion. Beast Crest Heater Shield mentions that you should not be so allured by a battle that you become prisoner to it. And I took that as an allusion to the beasts became prisoners of the champions. You know how there's the Godskin hunt? Well, before that, perhaps there might have been the lion skin hunt. And part of facing against these new conflicts, bringing back the old. You know, it's kind of like the shield that you get from the Grafted Scion, you know, trying to emulate the old that never was. So perhaps the old that never was like the beast culture, and it wasn't like they think it is, but like maybe the beast culture is part of the past. And maybe, perhaps, they are trying to take the old of the culture that they killed already. They're trying to revive their skins or graft them. This could be the origins of grafting. Maybe this culture was being revived to be killed again. So maybe this culture is revived through using their skin, and that's kind of where we get the Godskins from, is that they are emulating that culture that's using the skins of the lions to do the lion dance. So maybe the Godskin culture comes from this lion dance culture. And maybe there's a combination of grafting, and this is where a schism happened. And so each of these different groups took what they liked from it and they fought the other. So maybe Maliketh is like another instance of someone who's soulless, but from the other side. That would mean the whole dog culture was never meant to be part of this world. They maybe were gods taken from their world and thrown over here to serve the dragons. This is crazy, dude. I don't know. It seems like like you got the skins and then you got the grafting, and that makes sense. So like emulating the old. These are really interesting themes to think about nonetheless. I feel like I could just sit here and talk forever. Also, so this is everything that I've thought of since recording and then editing. I've been working as fast as I can, but they have literally released so much information. So if you take a close look around the lands between, you'll find the ruins of Fair Missoula. And on these ruins is a relief. This, if you look very closely, is on that helm. There's also the double helix on the helm as well. These golden ferns or like vines that kind of spool around remind me of Colgera, not gonna lie. Like, I've seen this boss fight before. Twin mold. I know who you are. Oh my gosh, imagine that. They're just literally remaking Zelda. That would be so funny. They just literally take every trope of Zelda and make Dark Souls. So it is interesting that this character is so closely connected with Miquella and is a devout follower of Miquella and is associated directly with Fair Missoula. This makes me think that we will get answers behind the connections between the needle, because that is one of the only things in the story that's not like really fleshed out, right? Like everything else is like mysterious, right? But we can kind of derive a lot of meaning from it. Of course, like there's mysteries that are really complex, but Miquella's needle, I feel like, is so important to the plot. The fact that it's hairy, it looks like a plant, it looks like it's sprouted from the previous needles. So to me, it would make sense. We find out why you can only use it in the boss chamber, in the Storm Beyond Time. They want to know exactly what we want to know, which is, why does it have to happen in the boss chamber of Plucidisax? Why does it have to be the Storm Beyond Time? Why is the Storm Beyond Time a storm? Is that the storm that was from Stormville? Who knows? But there is like this inherent connection between wind and the spirits and the kami, and the fact that these all seem to be timed together. I feel like we're just missing something like so like major and contextual. Like obviously, right? I mean, but one can't help but just try and look, like peer through all this evidence and like try it, and maybe something will click, you know? But yeah, keep your eye on this one right here. Oi, you got a license for stabbing? I got my license right here. Well, a license is a license. I don't know. I don't know. I'm like so hyped, dude. So anyway, I was inspired by Quailag, who posted her Miro boards, and I thought that was really cool. So I made my Miro boards available. So if you want to dig into my weird crackpot ideas and see how my brain is thinking, which I'm more of like a visual thinker anyway, then consider becoming a channel member. That's it for my analysis. What did you notice? What did I miss? Please put it down in the comments below. Anywho, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.